Okay. Itam existico. Good day. It is going on noon for Sunday, October 20th, 2019, in the last quarter of the lunar cycle Awakat Shikitsam, the deer moon, which is our sixth and final summer moon this season. So we're going to be heading into winter by next week, even though the cold already arrived here back a few weeks ago, one complete lunar cycle early. Anyway, I'm down here at Spopikami, obviously the Turtle Waters, where I am every Sunday morning religiously. I come out here 8 o'clock-ish, usually like 8 o'clock, because I am often meeting students here, as I did this morning, and take a walkabout, see who's here and what's new, what's changed, who isn't here, what are the absences, and try to learn some things. So I do that every week as a practice. Never fail unless I'm traveling or something and I'm not in the region. But if I'm here, then Sunday mornings, this is where I can be found, Spopikami. And one of the things that I've learned in this practice of coming out again and again and again and again is that, this is the way you get to know something well. You don't get to know it well if you just come out here, even once a month. To the extent that you live out here, you know this place more deeply, I think. But if you can come out here once or twice a week and spend an hour or two and really try to learn, really try to look at what's going on, the learning is incremental, but it's significant. And this morning, myself and one of my students, we observed something that we would not have understood the same way that we do, or at least hypothesize that we do. We would not have understood what we saw this morning in the same way if we were not frequent visitors to this place. So I'm going to go show you what we looked at this morning, and I'm going to use it as an example of the kind of benefits that I think come from this practice of repeatedly visiting. Oxysowatop. We visit. It's just like a person, if you want to get to know somebody, spend time with them. To the extent that you spend more time with them, you get to know them better. If you don't spend much time with them, you visit on occasion, and they're kind of putting on a show, well, then you get a version of what they want you to see. But if you're closer, the closer you bond, the more you visit, the more you learn. And that's kind of how it goes out here. I organize my studies, in a sense, categorize my time, I should say, out here in terms of lunar cycles, lunar increments. And this comes from Blackfoot practices that I was trained in regarding and surrounding the beaver bundle, which my first wife and I were transferred, Mahoney, and she still has. So that practice of paying attention to what's going on in the lunar cycles, they exist, those cycles, in the Gregorian calendar, but they don't represent real time the way that their solar time is represented. Their solar time is very accurate in their Gregorian calendar. Here's where your solstices are and your equinoxes. But as far as the moons go, you know, what we're coming into this next week, Halloween time, right? We're also coming into a new moon. That new moon is the beginning of winter, and the beginning of winter is what Halloween is actually all about. And this is another benefit of my studies in nature out here, is that when you're cluing into these lunar cycles and the nature cycles that are at least in part in sync with those lunar cycles, you also start paying attention to how the big, grand, almost universal holidays are organized and relate to this natural cycles, you know. And so what was Halloween? Well, Halloween is the start of winter, and you're you know, death is on its way in, basically. So it's a way of facing that, right? A strong way of facing death that's coming in Halloween. Anyway, things to think about. I learned a lot about Easter from this practice, and I've talked about that in many lectures and videos and such. But yeah, I think it's a really good idea to get out here, or to a place. Doesn't matter where. It doesn't even have to be like this, where it's considered like a nature park or something like that. Could be right in your neighborhood, just taking a walk around your block and looking at all that's going on, human and non-human, and all the different species, and you know, they're learning about their histories and kind of getting in the groove of paying attention to them and seeing what they're up to, how they're relating to each other. What are the natural cycles of your area, and as a human being, what are you to be doing in the midst of those natural cycles, right? Because we're very disconnected at this point from those cycles. I mean, we are and we aren't. We're still celebrating them, but we don't know that we are, right? The holidays still exist, but they've become something else, and nobody really understands that they're phenological in origin, and that word phenology, that is kind of the label that I've given the kind of study that I'm doing. I took it from Western biology, from those guys who look at, you know, when is the first dandelion flower emerge, write that down on the calendar. When do I see the first, you know, the first crane come back, the first sandhill crane come back in the area. First, as soon as I see it, mark it down the calendar. It's about the first appearances in Western phenology. But I believe there was an indigenous phenology. Well, I know there was a long-term, thousands of year science, and I've inherited some of that. And one thing I've been transferred is this practice, and I'd like to transfer it to others. So I have, you know, for the past decade or so, run a year-long series of kind of classes. When it was inside Red Crow College, it was a 3-course year-long series. After I left Red Crow College, I started to do the same series, offer the same series online for people to train with me through a Facebook page called Phenological Engagement. And I've had some students work their way into the practice through that, and some have been very successful at becoming practicing phenologists, so to speak. I'd like to do more of that. I'm not a very good marketer, but the time to really get into it, I think the best time anyway, the most auspicious time to jump into a study like this is right now, as we're transitioning into the first winter moon. The Halloween time is a good time to jump in, because you can start getting to know the players that are the peoples, the plants, the animals that are in your place, that are there year round during the winter, and there's a limited set, right? Some of those might be winter residents only. Some of them might be there all year round. But then in summer, things become, there's a huge rush of life and migrants into the area and insects emerging, and things that don't happen in the winter. So summer is really difficult to kind of keep yourself, really focused broadly. You really have to start honing in on certain projects, and you miss a great deal of what's going on because there's just too much for anybody to take in. But you'll take in even less if you haven't kind of prepped for it over the winter. So going outside and taking your walks and trying to learn, I think, is important to get into it this time of year, if you want to start the practice. I've had a couple of people ask me if they could jump in and onto my online group, my private phenological engagement page, and jump in and start the practice, start training with me for this winter. And I'm thinking I'm going to open up to that. I have been kind of like really shut down on training for maybe the last year, training other people, other than my Sunday morning walks and my like regular public videos where I show stuff that I'm learning. But I haven't been like really taking on students and stuff for at least a year, maybe more. And I'm thinking I'm going to open up to that again, and I'm trying to think how to organize it. I will use that phenological engagement Facebook page, but I think in terms of organizing the level of my engagement as a teacher instructor, that is probably going to be based on how much someone is paying. And so I used to ask for like $80 a month for somebody to do this course with me. And I was only getting a couple of students. It was a lot of work for the $160 a month or whatever I was getting from it, right? So I want to try to organize it differently. I want to allow some access at about a $5 a month level. No, maybe $10. I'm thinking I'm just going to use my Patreon account and reorganize the Patreon so that it can support people who want to train with me, real time and or close to real time, but who want to be more engaged with me in their own training, in various projects, one of them being this phenology. But I also see like Blackfoot language, because I often have people ask me, will you teach me Blackfoot language? I'm not even fluent in Blackfoot, but I know enough to really help a beginner, and so I've tried offering that stuff online before too. to varying success. It's really not as profitable as I'd like it to be for the time that I'm investing. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this phenology right. And the way that I'm looking at it is kind of like, you take this for a year with me, and it will transform you. I guarantee you, it'll transform you. With the minimal buy-in being like $10 a month. I'll still keep my Patreon as it has been, like $5 a month donation toward my cause is going to get you a t-shirt, because that's like $60 a year that you've just given me for a year, $5 a month for a year. So you give me $60, I'm going to give you a t-shirt at least in return, right? For $10, I'm thinking I'll open up access to one of these private projects, phenological engagement, or maybe the Blackfoot Language Project, and I'll have private Facebook groups for that. If you're not on Facebook, that's where we're gonna have issues, right? But I've got to use some kind of platform, and I don't want to pay for it because I'm trying to make things cheap for everybody, right? So Facebook is free. So if you're not on Facebook but you want to do this stuff and you're like, I wish it wasn't on Facebook, man, just go on Facebook. Just use it for this. You can use it for whatever you want to use it for. You don't have to be corrupted by the Facebook just because you're on there. Any case, yeah, I'll have private groups. So for $10 a month, you can access these private group Facebook pages, which is gonna you'll be able to follow those who are in the course directly working with me, follow their posts, their notes, their videos, their pictures, what they're learning, my feedback to them, all that stuff. You might get involved in those conversations yourself because you're in that group. Your ability to engage with the group is totally open. However, I might not give you a lot of my time if I'm not getting something out of it in terms of learning, unless you're actually enrolled in the course. So for $10 a month, you're in the access to the group, right? And the group, you get to see what's happening. You're going to learn a lot by proximity, even in that. But if you want my actual lessons and such, my private videos, and more of my coaching, that kind of thing, I think there have to be different tiers. And I haven't figured out exactly what that's going to be yet. It's not going to be $80 a month anymore. I think I'll kind of cap off at like $40 or $50 a month, just to keep things really affordable and inviting for people. But I've also got to make sure I'm protecting myself and my time and what I'm worth. And I see it as like somebody that wants to get fit. They go and they hire a personal trainer. If you want to get more kind of connected with your natural area where you live, your region, the plants and animals there, and get in that flow where you know what's going on around you ecologically, and you're thinking about how you might engage in it as a human being. If you want that practice and you want a personal trainer for it, then I'm your guy. And not only is it giving you personal training, but I'm going to connect you with a community of people who are involved in this study. And that's really what I'm trying to build, a phenologically engaged community. Anyway, let's go up here and I'm going to show you what I think I learned today, which I found cool. I don't know if you will. Let's check it out. Every time we meet at Spopikimi, my students and I hike out to this lookout point above the river. You can see Whoop-Up Drive in the distance and the University of Lethbridge. And we don't come out here necessarily for the view so much as we do to look in on this plant. This little group of plants right here are of a species called Yucca glauca, also known as soapweed. Yucca. Yucca is there's a lot of species of yucca, but one of the things that they're known for, widely, indigenous or not, is that foaminess that comes from mucking around with their roots, mixing their roots with water, boiling it, churning it, and it creates a foam, right? That foam is a primary ingredient. It's a secret ingredient in the Slurpee. Hey, 50 years. Still not a paid advertisement, 7-Eleven. But yeah, yucca is a key ingredient. Yucca root is a key ingredient in Slurpee. We wouldn't have Slurpee if it wasn't for some members of this genus. Any case, here in Lethbridge, this is the only example of this particular species growing in a natural area all on its own, not being cultivated in somebody's yard. Yeah, this is the only example that I know of growing in Lethbridge. It's a plant that is more often found in southern Blackfoot territory. Like if you go a little bit east of Great Falls, you start running into it endlessly. There's lots of it. It goes from there all the way through to the Dakotas, you know. When I was at Standing Rock the other winter for the protests, it was there. There was lots of it. But here in Lethbridge, this example here is the only, this little family of plants here is the only family that exists, right? Now, I think probably they were seeded off of the high level bridge, right? Train brought the seeds somehow, but they've been establishing themselves here. And this is one of the plants that my students and I are watching, and we watch it every week. And we've been watching it every week for probably 3 years. And something changed this week here with these yucca plants, and that is we saw activity arise from pocket gophers. Check it out. You've got all these mounds of freshly dug earth here from pocket gophers, and those mounds can be seen pretty much in and around every single plant. And you can see the entrance the pocket gopher takes down there, you know. So a gopher has targeted these plants, has targeted the yucca. And so when we first saw it, when we walked on the scene this morning, and we realized, oh, there's a gopher dug in here, our first instinct was, fear for the plants. Are they going to survive? That this gopher must be eating their roots. How are they going to survive, right? That was our very first go-to. Our brains went, scared for the plants that the plants that we come visit every week. But a couple seconds later, the mind starts clicking, and you start thinking, okay, why is this gopher targeting this yucca now? We've been watching this yucca every week for 3 years. A plant. We've seen it in all of its various stages. And why is this gopher targeting it now? Why wouldn't the gopher have come in, sooner? It lives in the area. The gopher has to live in the area. And there's gophers all around here. And these are real gophers, not the things that people in Montana and Alberta call gophers, which are typically ground squirrels. But these gophers don't come out. They live a subterranean life. They rarely come out, and if they do, they don't go running on the surface more than a meter from the entrance of their burrow. Most of their life is spent underground, the vast majority, and they have, hundreds of feet of tunnels and stuff dug, lots of different chambers and this and that. But they obviously know the plants in their area. They have to harvest, they have to live off those, and they can't really deplete them, right, to diminishment, because then they run out of food. So what's going to happen with these gophers at the yucca? Sitting there and thinking about it and looking at it and considering what we know about the yucca with our visits, we start putting together a hypothesis. Because one thing about this particular little family of yucca was that this summer they didn't bloom. They didn't send up flowering stalks. And so we were concerned. We were like, and they didn't really look good either. They didn't really look like full and lush in the way that they usually do. So we were concerned. I wonder if they're dying, something going on. Why aren't they sending up flowering stalks? So we did a little bit of lit review to try to see what the answers to that might be. And it seems that yucca doesn't flower, every single year. We've seen it flower a couple of years in a row, and then this year it's not flowering. But when it doesn't flower like that, one of the things that it does do is it sends out rhizomes from its roots to start new plants. Some years it seeds with the flowers. Some years it shoots rhizomes out. So this year it held its energy back from creating that flowering stem and put things into the creation of rhizomes. And my hypothesis now, after thinking about it, is that the gopher is there eating the rhizomes. So he's not actually going to do any damage to these plants, to the existing plants, but he's going to put a damper on the new shoots for new plants that would come from those rhizomes in the future. He might not eat all those rhizomes, but he's going to eat some of them. It also makes me think you might watch that gopher for clues as to where the good harvests of rhizomes are. Maybe this is a really good time of year to be harvesting some rhizomes from some roots. And maybe if you look at what the gophers are doing, you can see where the most delicious and rare things are. We're pretty sure that the yucca must be like gopher gourmet here, in South Dakota, eastern Montana, the gophers have it all the time. But up here, this little pocket of plants is the only one, and the gophers that live here might get access to that once every 3 or 4 years. It's no wonder they're all over it, right? So, but wouldn't even been able to entertain these kind of hypotheses and thoughts and stuff if it wasn't for the fact that I visit every week, and that I've targeted that set of plants there as one of the stopping points where we always check in. Hey, what's going on with the yucca this week? So that's the kind of learning that I enjoy, the practice that I have out here, and the kind of the benefits that come from it. It's incremental. You learn a lot, but you learn it over a long period of time. But it's learning that's also embodied in experience in ways that you don't have to have much memorization going on. You don't have to struggle and to study. You just have to keep going out there, and you're going to learn these places just like you would people. And I can help you do that. I've got tools to help you ask important questions, to help you socialize with these places in various ways that's going to make the experience more embodied. And you know, you're going to get a lot of learning benefits. I'm happy to be involved in that as a kind of a personal trainer in phenology. And if you're thinking about, if you think you might want to do that, I'm suggesting that maybe in the next week or two, you might want to just jump into it. And I'm going to create a kind of a platform for payments and for the distribution of the learning materials, the resources that I have and such. They're already there, but I'm going to tinker with them over the next week and get things working right for people that want to do this. And then I'll still offer it, you know, for you can enter at the new moon any time of year. When there's a new moon, new cycle, person could jump in, right? But I do think that going into the first winter cycle is really the best time to jump in and kind of get yourself grounded in your place before the chaos of summer comes around. Anyway, this is my little commercial for my upcoming phenology course, and also a little update on what's going on out here at Spokane. Didn't see anything else this morning that was of huge interest. The leaves this week fell probably about 3-4 nights ago. They fell in the forest main, and you know, really all over the river valley. You can see across Indian Battle Park, the forest is all bare of leaves now. So that when the leaves fall, it also gives you an opportunity to see things that you couldn't see that were concealed by the leaves before. So this morning, my student and I began like counting oriole nests and that kind of thing, which is another thing that we do every year. Start looking for each of the different bird nests, get a sense of how many nesting couples there actually were, that kind of thing, and learn some other things from the nests. Anyway, that's it. Headed out back home, upload this, and talk to you again in a day or two, and probably not in such a commercial context.